A man in rural Indiana lifted the back end of a pickup truck off his neighbor's leg with his bare hands. No training, no warm-up, a truck. And he held it long enough for someone to pull the man out. Then he walked away shaking, with 2 torn muscles and a fractured wrist, and no memory of feeling any pain. How is that even physically possible? What switch flips inside a human body that turns an average person into something that shouldn't exist? The mystery of science. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button, because what we're about to get into will completely change how you think about your own body. Here's the thing. Your muscles are not actually weak. Your brain is. Or more accurately, your brain is intentionally holding you back every single second of every single day. And once you understand why, you'll never think about human strength the same way again. Let's start with what's actually happening the moment you try to move a muscle. Your central nervous system sends an electrical signal from your brain down through your spinal cord, through motor neurons, and into the muscle fibers themselves. That signal tells the fibers to contract. More fibers recruited, more force generated. Simple, right? Except it's not, because that same system that fires your muscles also has a built-in override designed to stop you from ever reaching your real limit. Think about it this way. When you pick up a coffee mug, you don't crush it. When you grip a steering wheel, you don't snap it. Your brain is constantly running real-time calculations, dialing your force output up and down based on what it thinks is appropriate. And that system works beautifully in everyday life. But what happens during a genuine physical contest, like arm wrestling, where you're pushing toward your real ceiling? That's where things get fascinating, and honestly, a little dark. There are specialized sensors embedded inside your tendons called Golgi tendon organs. These are not muscles. They live right at the junction between muscle and bone, and their entire job is to monitor tension. The moment contraction force starts climbing toward what the body calculates as the danger zone, these sensors fire a signal back to the spinal cord. That signal causes your own motor neurons to inhibit your own muscles. Your body literally tells itself to stop. This mechanism is called autogenic inhibition, and it is the reason that in a normal state, most people are only using somewhere between 60 and 80% of their actual muscular potential. Read that again, 60 to 80%. The remaining 20 to 40% exists, it's there. Your body just refuses to release it under normal conditions, because releasing it without structural preparation dramatically increases the chance of tearing a tendon, snapping a bone, or destroying a joint. Now here's the question I want you to drop in the comments. Have you ever surprised yourself with your own strength? A moment where you did something physical you genuinely didn't think you were capable of? Because what we're about to explain is almost certainly the reason that happened, and most people have no idea. So what does it actually take to override autogenic inhibition? Because clearly it can happen. That man in Indiana is proof. The primary trigger is a massive hormonal cascade. Specifically, epinephrine and norepinephrine, 2 catecholamines released by the adrenal glands in response to perceived mortal threat. These chemicals don't just make your heart pound and your vision sharpen, they systematically suppress the inhibitory signals coming from the Golgi tendon organs. They raise your pain threshold dramatically. They increase calcium availability inside muscle cells, which directly amplifies contraction force, and they do all of this in roughly 2 to 3 seconds. The body essentially declares a biological emergency and reroutes everything toward one single goal: survival. When this happens at full intensity, the protective ceiling disappears, and what you get is what researchers call hysterical strength, a term that sounds almost dismissive, but refers to one of the most thoroughly documented anomalies in human physiology. The case files are not myths. A mother in Georgia, a teenager in Virginia, a construction worker in Colorado, all documented, all involved superhuman outputs of force, all left with significant physical damage afterward, because the structures that can generate that force are not built to sustain it without consequence. And that is the part most people never think about. The muscle can release more force than the skeleton can safely handle. That sounds insane, but it's true. Your muscles, under full uninhibited contraction, can produce torque that exceeds the tensile strength of the bones they're attached to, which means crossing that line isn't just impressive, it's structurally catastrophic. Now let's get specific about what this looks like in the context of arm wrestling, because arm wrestling is one of the most biomechanically deceptive activities that exists. From the outside, it looks like a simple contest of bicep strength. It is not. It is a complex multi-joint event requiring coordinated force output through elbow flexion, forearm supination, and shoulder internal rotation simultaneously, and those 3 forces create a spiral loading pattern on a single long bone, the humerus. The humerus is the bone that runs from your shoulder to your elbow, In a standard arm wrestle, as force increases, the humerus experiences rotational torque along its own axis. Up to a point, it handles this fine. Past that point, the bone doesn't bend, it spirals. A spiral fracture of the humerus mid-shaft is so consistently associated with arm wrestling that it has its own informal name in orthopedic medicine. Emergency room physicians have a term for it. It's a recognized pattern. And here's the brutal part. It doesn't require maximum effort from both competitors. It often happens to the person who is losing, because in a desperate attempt to reverse the momentum, they fire a ballistic muscle contraction that generates torque faster than the bone can redistribute it. Gone in a fraction of a second. The arm snaps before the person even registers that they've committed too much force. And it doesn't stop there. The biceps tendon, the cord-like structure that anchors your bicep muscle to the bones of your forearm, can rupture under excessive eccentric loading. You can feel it when it happens. There's a pop, then a wave sensation in the upper arm, then what athletes describe as the muscle balling up toward the shoulder. Without surgical repair within a narrow time window, you lose significant strength permanently. Beyond that, the radial nerve, which runs along the outer edge of the humerus, can be compressed or stretched in a catastrophic arm wrestle. Radial nerve damage causes something called wrist drop, the inability to extend the wrist, the hand, or the fingers. In severe cases, this persists for months. In rare cases, it's permanent. So why don't these injuries happen constantly? If the force potential is this dangerous, why doesn't everyone walk out of every arm wrestle on a stretcher? Because the inhibitory system works. Almost all the time, the Golgi tendon organs do their job. They sense the rising tension, they fire the shutdown signal, your force output is capped. You lose the match, your pride takes a hit, and you go home with both arms intact. The system is elegant. It is not a flaw. It is the reason you are not constantly destroying yourself. The problem is specific combinations of variables that can degrade that system's response. Sustained high emotional arousal is one. Adrenaline, as we've covered, actively suppresses inhibitory signaling. Stimulant compounds are another. Certain substances that increase sympathetic nervous system tone can blunt the Golgi tendon organ's sensitivity. Competitive tunnel vision, the psychological state where the singular drive to win overrides threat assessment, is a third. And then there is the physical factor of fatigue. When a muscle is already exhausted, its force production drops, but the protective mechanisms also become less precise. The system that's supposed to prevent catastrophic overload starts issuing noisier, less calibrated signals. Add 2 or 3 of these together in the wrong context, and you have a situation where the body's protective ceiling becomes unreliable. And if you push through that window at maximum effort, you are no longer in controlled territory. This is also why trained competitors actually break less often than casual ones. Not because trained athletes are weaker, they're not. Because they've developed not just muscular strength, but tendon robustness, technique that distributes load across multiple structures rather than concentrating it, and body awareness calibrated through thousands of hours of exposure. Their inhibitory systems are also more finely tuned. They know where the line is because they've approached it methodically. They've built the architecture to sustain higher outputs without crossing into structural failure. A casual competitor who jumps into a bar contest with a stranger, already 3 drinks in, emotionally activated by a crowd, with no technical training, that person is operating in a completely different risk environment. Their muscles can generate more force than their bones were built to absorb, and nothing in their system is calibrated to stop them before that becomes a problem. Now zoom out and think about what this actually means for human capability in general. We are, physically, far more powerful than we experience ourselves to be. The ceiling we live under every day is not our real ceiling, it's a managed ceiling, a calculated protective suppression of what we can actually do. That management is good. That management is why you can pick up your phone without driving your thumb through the screen. It's why you can shake someone's hand without fracturing their fingers. It's why you can grip a barbell and push hard without spontaneously shattering your own femur. But the existence of the managed ceiling also means the real ceiling is out there. And in extraordinary circumstances, it surfaces. The infrastructure required to access it without consequence is built through consistent training, progressive loading, technical refinement, and the gradual adaptation of tendons, ligaments, and bone density to higher and higher force demands. That's what strength training actually is at its core, not just building bigger muscles, but teaching the nervous system to trust higher outputs, and simultaneously preparing the supporting architecture to handle them. The man in Indiana who lifted the truck, he accessed real ceiling. He survived with injuries that sidelined him for months. The force was real, the consequences were real, and the gap between what he produced in that moment and what he could safely reproduce tomorrow is enormous. Your body is not holding you back out of weakness. It's holding you back out of mathematics, the math of what you are built to sustain, updated in real time. Every single rep, every single grip, every single match. The question isn't whether you have more in you than you think. You do. The question is whether the rest of you is ready to handle it.